Greetings, Kination and beyond. I'm Brett Sharpton in New York City, and I'm here with Tim Bertucci, and we have some information for you. I'll pass it to Tim.
Thanks, Brett. So to start off with some history, we go back to 1973 and the passage of the Rehabilitation Act, which was a law that contained this section 504, which promised certain regulations which would benefit people with disabilities. But these regulations were largely delayed or not put into place. And for years this happened, to the point that eventually protests broke out. And in 1977, the famous 504 sit-in took place, in which disability rights activists actually occupied federal buildings in cities like San Francisco and DC across the nation, and fought for better accommodations and treatment by the government in general. The real achievement came with the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, in 1990, which followed more protests. And this included the Capitol Crawl in March 1990, in which activists abandoned their wheelchairs and crutches and physically pulled themselves up the steps of the Capitol building, demanding civil rights legislation which protected them. From the ADA National Network's website, we have this quote: "The ADA is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all areas of public life, including jobs, schools, transportation, and all public and private places that are open to the general public." This was a major victory, and these and more were represented really well in a 2020 documentary, Crip Camp, A Disability Revolution, which was produced in part by the Obamas and is available on Netflix. I would highly recommend it. The film features a summer camp for disabled people which flourished in the 60s and 70s, and counts among its former campers a lot of eventual activists like Judy Heumann and James Lebrecht, who actually co-directed the documentary.
Thank you. I started looking for resources in the New York City area and then going out to find things that would be more universal for people who are not in New York. And what I found was that there's really two sets of resources here. Overall, the ADA National Network has a series of regions, and Region 2 covers New York and New Jersey. I also found a lot of things in New York City. So starting with the region, if you just look this up on Google, you can find all kinds of very interesting resources. Gateway to the ADA for Region 2, that led me to the podcast, ADA Live, which is this great podcast that comes out every month. They're on episode 106 now, COVID and mental health. I also came across an article by the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, calling out employers that algorithms and AI discriminate against disabilities. It gets baked into the software that's used for hiring. Fascinating paper, troubling and fascinating, and we're glad that EEOC has caught that. So let's see, the other set of resources I found were right here in New York City. The mayor's office has an office for people with disabilities going back to 1973, in fact, older than the Americans with Disabilities Act. And this is where I found something that's really scalable. Disability Inclusive Terminology Guide. And this concept really works. It's something that we've been talking about. So it starts with Our Words Matter, and it's an educational document. There's a list of terms that are offensive. Many people might not have realized that when they use these terms, they're offensive terms. Right beside them are appropriate terms to consider using instead. And then the third column has why. Well, what's the difference? Why one and not the other? And I found it to be fascinating. And it's really an excellent document. So these are some resources that I found that start from the New York area, but apply very broadly as part of this discussion. I'll pass it back to you, Tim.
Thank you very much. For some final thoughts and reflections, I have three sort of questions to consider, especially for us in the Kaplan family. First off, do we, Kaplan, commit to accessibility all year round, or just when it's kind of in the news or convenient for us to mention once in a while? Are our schools accessible? Are our web posts and other publications? If not, then that might be something we want to consider. Secondly, how do we react when we are told that our facilities or content aren't accessible? Do we get defensive? Do we explain it away? Or do we think of ways to be better? And third, even a little bit more generally as well, are individuals with disabilities part of the representation that we see on a daily basis? Not only in the, again, publications that we put out as a company, but just do we see a really representative sample of the world when we're watching TV or seeing images online and stuff like that? I know, just for one example, in our government even, I'm proud that Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth, who uses prosthetics and a wheelchair, is a woman of color who has given birth while in office and is out there, disabled, proud. And speaking of, we even have this entire month, July, is Disability Pride Month. And so when we think of Pride parades, Pride the way that we're used to thinking of it with other communities, there is also Disability Pride. And Chicago apparently has a parade for it each year, so it might be something I might even want to check out. But with that said, thanks everybody for listening, and we hope that this was interesting for you all and that you might take a moment to reflect on some of those questions, and have a good July.
Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Carla Parsons. I am the Assistant Director here at KI Vancouver. Today I have the great honor and privilege of recording this video on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples. I'm here to talk to you guys about Canada Day. I'm excited to do that. I love being Canadian. I'm a proud Canadian. But with that, we need to talk about our history. Last year, hundreds of unmarked graves were discovered at residential schools across Canada. As Canadians, we decided not to celebrate Canada Day last year. We used that time as reflection. This year, we're trying to find a balance between the celebration of Canadian pride with the reflections of our country's difficult and horrific history with Indigenous people. You may see Canadians deciding to skip wearing red and white and wearing orange instead. The color orange honors the experience of the Indigenous people, celebrates their resilience, and affirms a commitment that every child matters. September 30th, 2021 marked the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. This day is an opportunity to learn from our tragic past and how we can move forward together. I'm extremely proud to be a Canadian, and with that, I make a commitment to learn, unlearn, and support Indigenous rights. I encourage you to read the links provided in this email, as they are powerful and very educational stories. Thank you all for listening, and happy Canada Day from Vancouver.
Le quiz. Do you know what these celebrities have in common? The title Le Quiz may have given you a hint, but if not, all of these celebrities are either born of French-American parents or have French-Canadian ancestry and were raised or lived in the U.S. Some are first-generation French-Americans. These French connections, pardon the pun, are important, but French-American Heritage Month, the reason for this video, celebrates much more. French-American Heritage Month is a time to honor all of the important contributions made to the country by people of French descent, in terms of laws, art, culture, and language. Think the Statue of Liberty, Art Deco, cinema, philosophers Rousseau and Voltaire, Louisiana, French literature and Disney. The phrase La vie est trop courte pour boire du mauvais vin and much more. Look into the impact the French have had on America this French American Heritage Month and amusez-vous bien!